what's cool is you can see on the right hand side there's an old-timey tall sailing ship just kind of wandering through the harbor. And here's a closer shot of that. Lots of little kind of doors and nooks and crannies, none of which opened, although I did try to open every single one of them, of course. Now, that picture earlier with the fog rolling in over the tiny island, it had spread while we were at the Citadel, and it was starting to take over everywhere. As you can see, the bridge is starting to disappear. The Army Museum, and I should note I took like 450 pictures total over the 2 days we were there, so I'm only showing you guys a few of them. At the Army Museum, the most interesting thing that was there was, and this is not a very good picture, but this is a bag of sand and shrapnel recovered from Juno Beach in Normandy. And this is actually a service rifle that was recovered from Juno Beach. And those were my favorite parts of the museum. This is a BlackBerry barcode, which seemed incredibly out of place in this otherwise very out-of-date museum. And those are just girls in period costume conversing. We wanted to get to the place in between the outside and the fortress. There's this big ditch, kind of like a moat, but without water. And we found a tunnel and followed it. And we found a way inside the walls of the fortress. And I took this picture to show you how freaking terrifying it was. There was no light, and the lock on the door was broken, so I feel like we weren't actually supposed to go there. And this is just me hanging out on the sketchy door. And this is inside the walls, and I really felt like I was playing Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64. I don't know why it reminded me of that, but it did. Next stop, and it was raining by this point, was Fairview Cemetery. And as you can see, there are many Titanic graves that have inscriptions on them. And when you're there, you just feel such a profound sadness, and it just sort of washes over you, and it's very, very hard to shake. And a lot of this is the grave that has, since DNA technology has become available, D.J. Dawson, who is buried here, is actually a James Dawson, but everybody assumes it's Jack from the movie, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, so they leave flowers on the grave. Many of them are unmarked and just say died April 15th, 1912, which is very sad. A lot of them were young men who worked on the ship. This one is very sad because this woman and her 4 children, aged 2 to 8, all died together. I just had to fight back tears the whole time. This is erected to the memory of an unknown child whose remains were recovered after the disaster to the Titanic, April 15th, 1912, and as you can see, people have left small money donations and little toys on the grave, and all the donations will be sent to the Children's Wish Foundation. This is the entire Titanic gravesite, all of those 3 rows there. Near My God to Thee, as you know, they played as the ship was going down. And I just liked the inscriptions. Each man stood at his post while all the weaker ones went by, and showed once more to all the world how Englishmen should die. I'm very fascinated by graveyards and tombstones as it is, so this was like the ultimate for me. And this was one of the band members, and he was only my age, which is sad. And I picked up the toys and arranged them so that they were neat. And there's a black and gold button next to the duck. And I read it, and it's actually from Australia. People leave things from all over, and I think it's a very nice gesture. Also at Fairview was the gravesite of the Halifax explosion, unidentified victims, and this is their tombstone. Next stop was the Museum of Natural History, which was my favorite as a child, and we saw salamanders and frogs and snakes. But this is a picture of Gus, who will be 89. Actually, tomorrow, August 2nd, is his birthday, and he's been a staple at the museum for quite some time. In honor of Shark Week, here is some shark fetuses, hammerhead fetuses actually, in a jar, which is partially cool but a little bit weird. And this is an actual, mounted specimen that was once alive of a gigantic lobster named Francis. And here is a picture of Gus being fed a banana by a woman who works at the museum, and there's a little girl watching Gus eat the banana. Our next stop was Montana's Steakhouse, which I'd only eaten at once before, and it's got like a Western theme, and this is my Long Island iced tea that came in a jar. This was my spinach dip, which was exactly as delicious as it looks in this picture. And I wrote Taylor Swift lyrics on the table because I'm a loser. So we went to the public gardens last, and the sun was starting to come out again. And I can show you pretty much every picture here. So there's the fountain, and that's me in a tree, because I like to climb trees. That is the little Titanic model out on the pond. And there's a better shot of that model. And the colors were just so beautiful. And that is the gazebo. And that's a fountain up by this little house thing, which I never went in. And this explains how basically Hurricane Juan devastated pretty much anything pretty in Halifax, and they actually managed to raise $1 million in a week to restore the gardens to what they had been originally. And there's just a picture of a statue in front of the gazebo. And I took a picture of this because King George VI is Queen Elizabeth's father, and most of you may know him better as Colin Firth playing him in The King's Speech, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. And this is the tree. It was one of the biggest trees I've ever seen. There's another statue, and this was another fountain, and it was next to some weeping willows, which it was the most beautiful spot in the park, in my opinion. I absolutely love them. And there's yet another close-up of that Titanic model, and there's just the whole pond. it's just one of the most incredibly beautiful places I've ever been in my life. And there's a picture of us together by the pond. As you can see, the sun was really starting to shine, though it was about 7 o'clock at night. We didn't get home until midnight because we left so late, actually. And there's one last shot of the Citadel clock tower before we left. And there's one last shot of the bridge. And there's season 2 of Friends, which we bought at Future Shop because I had rented season 1 to take with us, and we'd finish it on the way up. So we watched season 2 on the way home. And that's essentially it. And I realized that this was really, really long. And if you guys stuck with me, thank you so much. And